The financial war may escalate into massive EMP attacks as financial showdown looms. The ongoing war over the control of the financial system and thus control over the future of the planet is reaching a dangerous crescendo. Multiple sources agree. Most significantly, the U.S. military distracted world attention last week with a fake vote between U.S. President Donald Trump and his former quasi-auxiliary Steve Bannon, while they used SpaceX to launch the secret Zuma satellite, Pentagon sources say. This electromagnetic pulse satellite was launched as the U.S. government's January 31st payment deadline looms and will be used against North Korea, the sources say. Since North Korea is a proxy and is really too analog to be affected by an EMP attack, this is clearly a veiled threat at the Swiss controllers who hollow out the US and build up China. Please note that the Western secret government uses the movements of celestial bodies to time major geopolitical events, in that January 31st is going to be the date of the first combination blue moon, supermoon, and lunar eclipse in 150 years. Celestial events aside, the US petrodollar system is in mortal danger this day now that the major oil exporter Russia's, Venezuela, and Iran are selling oil without going through the dollar system. U.S. agency attempts at regime change in Iran and Venezuela have failed so far, emboldening other major energy exporters like Qatar and Indonesia into thinking of bypassing the petrodollar as well. Furthermore, Russia just doubled its oil export capacity to China on January 1st with a new pipeline. Pakistan has also dealt a serious blow to the old system by announcing it will use Chinese yuan in trade, while expelling 1.4 billion Afghans and visiting China to build a military base there. This means that foreign income from Afghanistan could be threatened. Since the petrodollar is more accurately described as a petro-macro dollar, this is also a big blow to the old system. With this background, China is considering January 18 as the starting date for oil futures trading denominated in China's yuan and gold. This is why Pentagon sources are talking about an EMP attack, while CIA sources are saying, as reported last week, that a backdoor is going to be used to shut down the financial system. In this context, it is also worth noting that an Iranian oil tanker caught fire off the coast of Shanghai last week. This was most likely a veiled warning to Chinese by the U.S. military-industrial complex to let them know they can still cut off much of China's energy. In other words, they are telling the Chinese to back up from unilaterally replacing the old financial system until a final agreement is reached on the new. Meanwhile, now that the top ranks of the Satan-worshipping Khazarian mafia in the U.S. have been decimated, the white hats are grabbing the top European pedophiles and Khazarian mobsters and taking them to the U.S. military base on Diego Garcia Island, Pentagon sources say. Julian Assange is now in U.S. military custody and has provided actionable information to the U.S. military and agent white hats. For example, they are now using naval SEALs to track at least 7 shipping containers to stop human trafficking, Pentagon sources say. In the campaign against the Khazarian human slavers, the second episode of the BBC miniseries Mafia showed Russian and Eastern European women being trafficked into Israel via Egypt, the sources say. Immediately after the show was broadcast, Egypt rounded up 75 people from human trafficking. Also, the Israeli criminal mastermind Moshe Harel was arrested last week for running a worldwide human organ trafficking network. There is also a major attack going on against Khazarian hedge funds and their operators, the Pentagon sources note. They note that 10 Khazarians, including hedge fund Bridgewater Associate executive Bruce Steinberg, were killed in a Costa Rican plane crash. Former FBI Chief James Comey used to work for Bridgewater, but this may be a message to the shadow bankers and the investor, they add. Attack on hedge funds and Israeli dirty money continue as former Oak Ziv executive Michael Cohen was indicted for fraud in Africa, and he is linked to sanctions Israeli billionaire Dan garnered, the source continued. Meanwhile, inside the U.S., President Donald Trump dissolved the voter fraud commissions after its work resulted in over 1,000 sold indictments that are now being acted upon, they say. Hillary Clinton's Uranium One, Clinton Foundation, and email scandals are being reported on in most major corporate propaganda media now, that an official investigation has been formally announced by the FBI and the Justice Department. After burning files and computers at her New York house, Hillary may be hanged for treason, the Pentagon sources say. In fact, Hillary and many others should be hanged for mass murder, and not just treason. If this investigation is real, it will lead to the underwater nuclear weapons that were used off the coast of Haiti to trigger a tsunami and earthquake there. That in turn will finally bring so-called mainstream attention to the Fukushima nuclear and tsunami mass murder attack on Japan. This will inevitably lead to the long-awaited purge of Japan's slave politicians and their Khazarian puppet masters. As we have long reported, the Fukushima attack on Japan was part of the plan by Rothschild and the hidden Swiss masters to move their Asian headquarters from Tokyo to North Korea. Then Prime Minister Nato Kane was publicly stated that he was pushed to evacuate 40 million people from Tokyo to the Korean peninsula in the wake of that disaster. In a sign of just how deep the rapid hold runs, a recently published Japanese book claims that World War II Japanese Emperor Hirohito was in fact a field marshal in the British Army. Here are scanned pages from the book claiming to show copies of British military cables that back the claim. Members of the Rothschild family have told us in the past that Japanese role in World War II was mainly to steal gold from Asia in order to ensure the continued Khazarian control of the world financial system. Meanwhile, a source claiming to represent the good side of the Rothschild family sent a diagram with the instruction "Follow the White Rabbit." At the very top of this chart, they claim that the Vatican and Catholicism are the key to understand it all. In any case, one Asian leader who is deeply in bed with the Khazarian mafia, Malaysian Prime Minister Najib Razak, is already preparing to flee according to CIA and MI6 sources in Asia. Here is a raw intel from CIA Asia, and the last sentence is the punchline. Najib has yet to publicly comment on Mahathir's appointment. The Prime Minister is scheduled to visit Saudi Arabia this week. My MI6 contact in Malaysia told me that Najib is attempting to get asylum in Saudi Arabia. He may not come back to Malaysia. The heat is on him. He was thrown off more than $5 billion from Malaysia, and everyone in the know is aware of it. Remember, Najib has been embroiled in a missing funds scandal involving Saudi Arabia and Goldman Sachs. He is also a key person of interest in the missing Malaysian Air Flight 370 and 15. Najib is unlikely to find any real shelter in Saudi Arabia, though, because the regime there is no longer under the control of his former partners in crime, who have been fudged. The US military now de facto controls the Saudi Arabia. He could try to seek shelter in Ukraine instead, but it is unlikely that the Khazarian criminal government there is viable for much longer either. That is because most of the Eastern European countries it counted on to help it provoke the Russia are moving away from the Khazarian fascist EU project. This can be seen in the rejection by 16 Eastern European countries of the plan to import millions of single young Muslim males. It can also be seen in their embrace of the eastern-looking Eurasian One Belt, One Road infrastructure project. In Japan, the former bastion of the EU project, nationalists are on the rise and demanding independence again after 70 years of occupation government. Angela Merkel, the most senior Khazarian bloodline person in power in the West, has been told to resign by the anti-bloodline Nazi Illuminati. Remember, the regime that Merkel represents has mismanaged Germany so badly that the German birth rate has plummeted, and the long-range survival of the German vote, and not for itself, is in danger. Now that the renditions of senior European Khazarian has begun, she will not be able to clinch her power much longer. Many people have already vanished from EU headquarters in Brussels. People are also dropping off the radar in Italy and Switzerland. A revolution in the West is unfolding before our eyes. Let us see how long it will be there before Pope Francis negotiates surrender.